Today we're talking to Oscar-winning visual effects artist, designer, illustrator, sculptor, and man of many talents, Doug Drexler. Doug has been involved in many Star Trek productions, including Voyager, Enterprise, The Next Generation, and most recently, Star Trek Picard. Doug is currently crowdfunding for a documentary about his work on the Star Trek universe. There are now fewer than 24 hours to support the Kickstarter and get access to some Galaxy-class rewards. You can check out the Kickstarter linked in the video description below. Keep watching for our interview with Doug, where we talk about working on the USS Enterprise J, his time on the set of The Next Generation, and more. If you want even more insight, including some on Battlestar Galactica, catch the full interview over on the Trek Central Patreon, linked below. Okay, engage. So I'll just kick things off. Doug, thank you very much for joining us here on Trek Central today. We're honored to have you here and talk Star Trek. But yeah, let's start by talking about your brand new documentary. Could you tell us a bit about it, what led you to creating it, and where we are?
What really, I've always enjoyed writing. I don't consider myself, I'm not a professional writer really, but I do have a flair, and people have enjoyed my writing on Facebook. Over the, I had a blog called the Drex Files for a while, where I wrote about things behind the scenes or things that happened to me. And I knew that eventually I'd want to write a memoir, because there's some good stories. There's some pretty funny stories. It's not just Star Trek. There's Hollywood stories too, outside of Star Trek. And, I was married to Dorothy for 32 years, and she had a health crisis, and I lost her about over 4 years ago now, maybe almost 5 years. And of course, she was my soulmate. And in 32 years, we never had an argument. That's how amazing it was. And anyway, once I endured that after, her loss, I really think that I decided I needed to write my memoir, because you learn that things can change in a minute. You never know what's going to happen. The side benefit to it was that writing my memoir, was a way of working through it. It really helped bring me back to reality. For a while, I was suicidal. I could not see a reason to go on after losing her. So I had written my memoir. It's not quite done yet, and it'll be coming out at the end of spring by Jacobs and Brown, that does the Cushman books, like These Are the Voyages. And I went with them because they publish genre stuff. And I know that they'll take it to them. It's interesting. If I go to a regular mainstream publisher, and I had one that wanted to do it, after a year, they probably wouldn't care about it anymore, But I know that Jacob and Brown it'll stay on, in their catalog for a while. So one day, I'm at a diner in Burbank, where a lot of industry people go for lunch, and I'm coming out, and this guy recognizes me, which is always a surprise when someone does. And we chatted for a few minutes, and of course we liked each other right away, because we're both Star Trek geeks. And you know how it is, there's this kind of, me and Denise Okuda always called it shared childhood, where you meet someone who's a big Star Trek fan and really knows Star Trek, and it's like off to the races. It's like you've known them all your life, So that's this guy's name was Jason Smith, and that's what happened when we first met. And a couple of months later, I got a Facebook Messenger message from him telling me that he does extras and behind the scenes for television shows and movies and the CW and the Arrowverse, and he wants to do a documentary on me, which I thought was really kind of funny. But he was determined. He thought it would make a great documentary, and it is an eclectic career. Typically, someone finds a place for themselves in the business, and they stay there for like 40 years or more. But that's not the way it was for me. I started off as an effects makeup artist. Everyone I started with is still doing effects makeup. But since then, I've been, a graphic designer, illustrator, conceptual designer, visual effects artist. I told that to an old friend of mine, and she said, "Oh, can't hold a job, huh?" But you know, when I finally got out here, which was because of Dick Tracy, and Dick Tracy was done, I went over and begged Mike Westmore to come let me work on Star Trek. And he's like, "But why? You're doing features." I'm like, "No, it's all about Star Trek. It's always been about Star Trek." I forgot, when I do one of those, no, then I forget where I was before that. What was I saying? I don't know.
Coming out to work on Star Trek, wasn't it? Begging, yeah.
So, coming to work on Star Trek, when you're on a show that's a family like that, we were all together for almost 2 decades. And you really get to know each other under the best and worst conditions. And in a situation like that, you make friends, and it's not that difficult if they like you and think you've, got something to offer, to slide sideways into another department, which is basically what happened with me. I slid sideways from the makeup department to the art department. From the art department, I slid sideways again into the visual effects department, So those kinds of opportunities were like on a silver platter. And I just loved everything about the show. I mean, when I was a kid, it was all about, if I had more time, I'd probably end up in wardrobe, I love every aspect of it. And then, of course, it all started in the mid-'60s when I got Stephen E. Whitfield, Stephen Poe's book, The Making of Star Trek, which I was like 12. And it was an epiphany for me. I mean, today you could go on the internet and see everything about everything, and way more of it than you ever asked for. But in the 60s, all we had was a telephone with a wire connected to it, a television, which you couldn't play back things, you couldn't stream, So for me to read it, first, I was obsessed by Star Trek anyway when I first saw it. And I was I was illiterate for that age. I had read all the classics. So when I saw Star Trek, it was so obvious that the people behind it were genuinely Star Trek fans, science fiction fans, and that was the beginning for me, getting that book and realizing, and of course I was getting slide clips and stuff from Lincoln Enterprises and scripts, and realizing that outside the frame of your TV screen, there's this other adventure going on. And I think I remember when I was first getting film clips from the show, you would get a visual effects pack. And sometimes there'd be a guy with a clapboard. You're like, what the hell is that about? Where you could see the crew with their microphone overhead. And there's this other world that's happening there that's actually even more exciting than the stories that they're doing on the show. So that was the beginning of it for me.
That's fantastic. And like you say, it's been such like a fantastic journey so far, like through all those different departments and such.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, especially now that I have some miles behind me, to be able to look back over a large, swath of it which is one of the great things about writing a memoir. It gives you a clearer picture of where you've been and how you got there. And there's parts of a lot of it that seem like it was plotted, like a script or something, that each of these things rolled into another or affected each other. You can't see that until much later.
The Kickstarter, I guess, what's the goal behind that, essentially? I guess the goal is to make the documentary, but like, what brought you to doing a Kickstarter, I guess?
Well, we're doing pretty good. There's about 50 hours left on the Kickstarter. I think that we're up to like almost 150,000. The goal is 165. And the way these Kickstarters, apparently, they start off with a bang, they kind of settle out in the middle, and then the last couple of days it takes off like a rocket. So I think we're going to make it. Awesome. But you never know. So if you're out there and you look in the back of your couch for change and stuff like that, any amount, honestly, really, we really could use your help, especially now. We're really coming down to the wire. I feel optimistic about it, but, hopefully we'll see. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. Yeah. What's exciting to me about this Well, of course, I met Jason, and he said he wanted to do a documentary, and I was like, well, it just so happens that I pretty much have finished my memoir, which is kind of a roadmap to the whole thing, you know. But in the past, there have been a lot of great documentaries on Star Trek, but most of the time they focus on the actors and the writers and the producers, which is all great. But there is this other crazy business that's happening in the background that they kind of breeze over most of the time. Although I have to say that Brian Volk Weiss in his center seat did an entire episode on the ships, which I love that episode. I mean, how often do we get to talk like that, you know? So the idea of doing something that focused on that kind of below the line thing, like people like me. I mean, I've gone in and done interviews for an hour, and then they'll use 5 seconds, you know. They're missing some really good stuff here. And so that's what this documentary focuses on. And what I really would like to see, if this is a success, is to do more of these based on other people. You know, Dan Curry, visual effects supervisor, he has a really interesting background, and that what led him to Star Trek, and Mike and Denise Okuda. To me, that would be the ultimate success for this.
Talk about the Kickstarter and such. I guess, you know, you offer a fair few rewards on the Kickstarter, so there's still time when this comes out for people to check it out. Let's talk about some of the rewards people can get if they choose to support. Well,
I mean, there are crazy rewards on the Kickstarter site, and way more than you would usually see on a Kickstarter site. I mean, I pulled a lot of stuff out of my garage. You know, there are actually one of a kind, you know, things that, graphic sheets for detailing starships that we used on the show. I've got tons of model kits that were never used, and as a matter of fact, the most popular thing that we have is I had like a couple of yards of the curtain that hung outside 10 forward that had a little Mylar star stuck on it.
Nice.
And when the show was done, they cut it down and we're waiting to throw it out. So I cut off a yard, and now we're like snipping it into 2-inch squares, and people could buy a piece as a reward, have a piece of the Alpha Quadrant. You know, there's also, you know, I think the most amazing thing up there, although I don't think that many people think it's amazing, but I do, is one of Gene Roddenberry's golf clubs.
Wow.
You know, I mean, Thor had his hammer. Yep. Gene Roddenberry's golf club. I mean, I think that's crazy cool. But like, for instance, I have lots of original scripts from the stage on Next Generation.
Nice.
One of the things I put in there was the script for Unification, you know, where Leonard Nimoy was on. It? And I got the script signed by Leonard and Patrick and Brent Spiner and Mike Westmore, and so that's a reward that you could find it there. Plus some really crazy stuff like you can have dinner with me, Mike Okuda, Denise Okuda, Barbara Luna, Milena Moreau from the original series, because she's one of my best friends, and you know, we're kind of a family group, and we get together a lot and we have fun, and so that's a reward. Come and have dinner with us.
That's
I think we'll do a viewing night at my house for like Wrath of Khan or something like that you know, you can come to. But yeah, tons. I think there's like a couple of hundred things up there that people will find interesting.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I kind of want to know now, how did you end up with one of Gene Roddenberry's golf clubs? Did you buy it, or like, where's this? I'm now really curious. Like,
no, you know what? Rod Roddenberry auctioned a bunch of Gene's stuff for charity, and I was really trying to get one of his typewriters. I thought that was awesome, but one guy really outbid me. But the golf clubs were there, and no one seemed interested in those. I thought that was extremely cool, and so I got those.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome.
Awesome. Well, great to hear about the rewards and such. As I say, hopefully people find them really interesting. I just had a quick scroll down as we're talking. Some of the art prints look fantastic as well. I think I found one of your calendar ones as well. It looks like the NX-01 Enterprise, but the refit version, which looks amazing.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like I've always been fascinated with that ship as well. It's such a shame we didn't see it in Enterprise, but I believe we saw it in Picard, maybe.
It was in Picard,
Yeah.
and we've never seen it in action. I mean, I've done some animations of my own, but who knows? Maybe we will. I just hope that if it ever gets used, it isn't by somebody who wants to change everything about it, which happens a lot, and it's distressing for me, and I think a lot of fans. It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You wake up the next day, your partner is someone else.
For us, that's Starships. If they change them, it's like, what have you done?
Yeah. Or it's like going in a restaurant and finding out that it's under new management, and the food's not the same anymore.
It's just like whenever you hear about it quite often. Like, I really want them to make a new Stargate series, but I'm like, ooh, I'm not quite sure if I want things changed. So
yeah, well, the thing is, you either get in a gang that feels dedicated to everything that came before, but you can also get a gang that it's just a job, and here's an opportunity for me to show what I can do. And I've always been involved with groups that feel that we want to preserve where we came from and not mess with it. We've always treated it like a historical drama.
Yeah.
It's like if you're doing a story about the attack on Pearl Harbor, you don't give the Japanese F-15s because they're so much cooler. So the times that we did recreate the original series on Enterprise, like Mirror Darkly and Trials and Tribulations, it was important that it be the place that everyone knows and loves. What if Picard had gotten done and they returned to the D and the bridge was changed because somebody thought they had a better idea? It would freak out. I mean, holy crap, why would you do that? As far as Picard goes, a guy named Dave Blass started chatting with me on Facebook Messenger, and we just talked as fans, and he was a super fan, and then one day he says to me, Doug, I'm the new production designer on Star Trek Picard, and I want to get the band back together. And I was like, it was like, what? And he believes in where the show's been. He doesn't want to change the past. He wants to build on it, which I think is the best way to go. And he says, and guess what? Guess who the showrunner is? I'm like, I don't know. He says, Terry Metalis. Now, Terry was with us on the old shows, from the 90s and early 2000s as an assistant. And people who love Star Trek would usually make their way up to the art department because that's where you'd see cool things being designed. So Terry was in the art department a lot. And he loved where the show had been, didn't want to tamper with that, wanted to build on it. And so it was important to Terry and Dave to get people who knew the show and cared about it. And that's what we were. And one of the great things I'll never forget, Terry got the show in the second season, but he couldn't implement the story that they had already plotted out a second season. But I worked with Dave and John Eves and Tom Malone was involved too, doing a new Stargazer. And we made sure that the Stargazer, when people saw it, would be a Starfleet ship. It would have every little fingerprint. It would, warp core egress, transporter emitters, RCS thrusters, everything that you expect to see on a starship is there. That's what fans, if you love starships, that's what you want. If you're an aviation buff and you go to a movie that features P-51 Mustangs and they've decided to spiff them up, you're going to be really upset. So, and that's where we come from. We're fanatics about maintaining the show and building on it. We want to make sure that when people see it, and they did, and I remember there was a first episode, second season, this loving shot looking down on the Stargazer underneath, turning and looking at it. And the next day, the internet went crazy.
I think I remember when it was released, and we were like, "Wow, this is like we didn't expect things." I've got the model of the ship somewhere in the office. I was trying to look where to find it. It's around behind me somewhere. Oh, here it is. So like the Phantom Company released a model of it.
Yeah, and one day they'll send me one. You know, they do such a great job on these models. I mean, the detail is actually. Did you see the Hallmark ornament for the Titan?
Yes, I saw it at New York Comic Con. It looked beautiful.
A detail on it was so crisp. You know, I mean, sometimes the detail will be exaggerated a little bit on something that's that small, but not this. It was amazing to look at. What a bargain too. So, and it may even have been Trek Central that I saw a quote. Someone said, "We haven't seen a shot like this of a Starfleet vessel where there was every little detail you could hope for since the end of Enterprise." Because you've got to have people who know it and love it through and through. Because often you'll get people who really don't know much about Star Trek, and they're just going to do a science fiction design. You know, Star Trek has never really been science fiction designs. Every starship is kind of an experiment in what it's not treated like it's just going to be on a TV show. It's like we're trying to figure out where things might logically, where it could be going. And it's kind of it's not unlike Walt Disney wanting to do Epcot, you know, and that it's an experimental prototype city of tomorrow. When we do a starship, the people who really love, you know, people like Rick Sternbach or John Eves or Michael Kuda, you're doing it. It's an experimental prototype spacecraft of tomorrow. You know, you're treating it like an experiment, not like a movie design. Star Trek, real Star Trek starships have always been, you know, on one hand, I consider Star Wars ships, which are beautiful, as science fiction designs, but I see Star Trek designs as aircraft logic designs. And it was the first time I ever heard that term, aircraft logic, was, you know, we were at Matt Jeffries' hangar where he kept his plane, his Waco, and he used the term aircraft logic, which is what he applied to everything. You know, he's not trying to do a science fiction design. That's the difference.
So yeah, I going back to what you said about logic there and like how Star Trek imagined what it's like, I think that's one of the reasons I like Enterprise quite a lot, because you look at the NX-01 and like you think, if we thought now 100 years in the future with a bit of like, you know, like the warp core technology thrown in, I'm like, this makes sense really, you know, and then you wind it back from the original series, you think this is like a logical step again, and again, aircraft logic there. So I think you're absolutely correct. That's
what we always try to do, and I'll tell you that, you know, Michael Kuda and I are very close friends, and when we were on the show, spent a lot of time sitting in his office chatting out how things worked and why. And I think this was probably the first time I was the lead designer on the NX, and everything Mike said to me was like very, 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 very important. So I think he probably was more involved with this ship than any ship that had ever been done for Star Trek. And it really is probably the most thought out of all the ships. And it really is true. Every little bit of it is thought out, because the thing about starships and people who love them, starships and the people who love them, part of the joy is looking at it, finding all the things you expect there, and knowing that if I pull panels off here, here, and here, I know it's going to be back there. And that's part of the fun. It's kind of a club to be able to know all that stuff. And that goes for Star Trek history as well. People buy books, they buy blueprints, magazines, model kits. When you have something like an encyclopedia, and I know Star Trek fans who know every bit of the encyclopedia and know when and where. And when you do a show that throws that out, that's pretty upsetting. I mean, I invested all this time and money in this, and then they changed it all. So in a way, it's kind of disrespectful to somebody else's time and love, you know? Yeah. I mean, it's a delight to see Lower Decks, because they really know their Star Trek, and they demonstrate it all the time. Fans loved that, the in jokes and things that only a true fan would get. And it, often on the newer shows, they'll put something in and it comes across as kind of like pandering, not so much out of love, when you watch Lower Decks, that the jokes and the little Easter eggs are coming out of love, and they're having as much fun doing it as people are having watching it. See, that's a beautiful thing. But season 3 Picard was on the money. We all cared about where it had been. We were there. Dave Blast loved having us involved. Terry Matalis loved having us involved. When Dave asked me to come on board, I thought he was going to ask me to do graphics. And I'm not saying graphics isn't difficult, because it is it's difficult to come up with a good design. But I always found that the producers are looking less at the graphics and making notes on them than they are the ships. And I had spent, years on Enterprise where sometimes they get too involved and you'd end up doing 30 different versions of something because they want to see everything. And at the last minute, now they can look at everything and then make a choice. I didn't really want to do ships. And when he told me he wanted me to work on ships with John Eaves and him, I almost had a heart attack because I'm like, oh no, I don't want. but then I got a grip on myself and realized this was like COVID was still going on, and I had spent the last couple of months, because we were shut down. I was on the Orville. I spent the last couple of months saying, okay, I'm an okay modeler, but I want to be a great modeler. So I'm going to take this time. I picked up a new program called Modo, and I said, I'm not going to build starships. I'm going to build Lamborghinis. I figure if I could model a Lamborghini, a Starship is a piece of cake. So I had gotten good at modeling cars, which is much more complex, the curves and things that are going on. And so after I got a grip on myself and almost had a nervous breakdown because I'm going to be doing ships, I'm going, oh, wait a minute. I am ready for this. I am ready. So it was almost like it was planned. And I just had such a good time. And I had full command of being able to model almost anything. And it was great. And of course, the other thing was that Terry and Dave have notes and opinions on what things should look like. But frankly, I've never been in a situation like this where the producer was more interested that I was happy with it. But Doug, do you like it? I mean, that's like mind-boggling. Terry was more concerned that I was happy with it, but Terry knew who we were and had been around us for a long time. He knew the ships were in good hands. He wasn't trying to tell us how to do it. He had thoughts and put in, and that really paid off hugely. You got to get the best people you can and let them do their thing. I mean, in a way, Walt Disney was like that. He didn't. He would go from department and throw out little notes here and there, but basically he let these people who he knew were like some of the best in the world do what they did best. But sometimes you'll get a producer or a director who thinks they know better than anybody, which is crazy, but you can't. Hollywood is crazy. So what can I say?
So, Picard season 3, one of my favorite elements of that is the starships. Obviously we have the Stargazer in season 2. Then in season 3, we've got many more starships and a lot of new designs as well. Can you talk about some of the designs you made for season 3 or had a part in making?
Yeah, I mean, I had a part in the Stargazer, Titan, Helios, the Duderstadt ship that we only see briefly. I designed the Daystrom station. I think that was about it, really, all the major ships. One of the beautiful things about when Dave and Terry were there was, I think that the last shot, I don't know if it was season 1. Oh, well, there's a scene where a Federation Armada comes zip, 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 10,000 ships. Holy crap. I mean, yeah. But it was like they were all the same ship. And they think we're not going to know. I mean, you really don't know anything about Star Trek fans, do you? I mean, that's like stepping on a landmine right there. And fans, they were like, oh my God, I mean, really, guys? What kind of an insult is this? So later on, when Terry and Dave were there was a scene where this really strange Borg ship shows up, and a Federation fleet, not 10,000 ships, a Federation fleet shows up of a reasonable size, and and the fans had a field day identifying every ship.
Oh yeah,
That's
I remember.
that's this class. That's this class. That, to someone who loves this stuff, is a thrill. There's something to discover. When every ship is just a rubber stamp, what's fun about that? There's no fun at all. But I saw people for weeks going through and making charts and pointing to and saying what it was. And, that's the road to success. You're appealing to your fan base, and it's not pandering, it's the way it should be. So season 3, when Terry finally got to do the show he wanted to do, which was a TNG reunion, which was amazing. And oh my God, that bridge. I know many, many people were weepy when they saw that. I mean, and see them all coming on board. But, the thing also is that about Picard season 3 is that the show is about coming full circle, and not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera too, with us there, with Jonathan Frakes there, with Mike and Denise Okuda there, with, it's kind of it makes you think about life, it's kind of a life lesson. And you're watching it happen to these characters that you love. It was also happening to us as well. I mean, for us to walk on that bridge, I was a makeup artist on Next Generation for 3 years, and I lived on that set, and it was perfect. It was absolutely amazing. It was built much better than what we had on TNG. I mean, they used better materials. Like, for instance, on the Enterprise D bridge, originally, where they have there's like a curved little bead that runs around the top. Those were pool noodles. Because you could bend them and tack them into place. So the new bridge was actually built much better than the first one, and it looks just like the original. I mean, and also, the ATMs in the back, they had, flat screens there that did not reflect. And we were doing backlit graphics that we didn't even, in the beginning, there wasn't even a way to print those things out in color. You printed them out like film negatives, and then you go back with lighting gels and spray glue them on for the colors. And the movement was created with beer sign technology, which was genius on the part of Mike Okuda. They couldn't get monitors at that time, and just doing animations to run on monitors would be really difficult. So Mike came up with of using this material called Polar Motion, which in the past we had seen like on subway platforms, like if it's an ad for Salem cigarettes, there'd be a waterfall and the water would be moving, and it's a piece of polarized film that has a pattern built into it with a wheel behind that has a pattern in it. And when it turns with light going through, it creates this kinetic movement. And so Mike used that. And you know what? I love Polar Motion. It doesn't look like anything else, And Mike hated Polar Motion because what he really wanted were monitors. And when we went to Deep Space Nine and we started getting monitors, I would still beg him once in a while, can I use Polar Motion here? Just here. I won't use it anyplace else, I promise. So as a makeup artist, there's often when you're part of the stage crew, there's a lot of hurry up and wait going on, while they're lighting and setting up a shot. You got to keep yourself busy, so that could mean, reading a novel or just making yourself, busying yourself with something like that. For me, I was loose on the Enterprise, and I crawled over every square inch of those sets. And I had my nose right against the plexi looking at stuff. And if you thought it looked good from a distance, oh my God, this Mike Okuda guy, he's not kidding around. He's really figured all of this out. This is not science fiction. He's doing extrapolation here, and he knows what he's talking about. And then the other thing was that up until Voyager, all the ship sets were the same sets, but restyled since Star Trek The Motion Picture. Same corridor in the same place, transporter room in the same place. When Herman Zimmerman came in, he had the motion picture sets, and the bridge was built entirely from scratch. But as far as the corridors and sick bay and cruise quarters, all from Star Trek The Motion Picture, built on top of that. And that creates a sense, it's actually a good thing, because it creates a sense of like this thread that runs through all the shows. Just the fact that the arc of the corridor is the same in all the shows kind of ties them together, But the other thing was, I would get behind things. I would go behind walls and see what was there. And there's kind of like, it's like an archaeological dig, because while I was there, I found remnants of Star Trek The Motion Picture. I found a transporter room door from the motion picture with the emblem of the transporter leak holes graphic still on it.
Wow.
I found part of engineering from Star Trek Phase 2, the show that never happened, was back there. So while everyone else was like just hanging out, twiddling their thumbs, I was looking at every bit of the ship and loving it. And of course, I actually met Mike Okuda face to face first time on stage. Of course, I knew who he was, and I just gushed. And Mike is kind of private and personal guy. I think I embarrassed him, but there was this great moment. I wanted to get into the art department, and I was walking down the D corridor. There was no one else there, and here comes Mike in the other direction. And we stop and we're chatting, and he knows I'm one of him. And I said, Mike, what are the odds of me getting into the art department? And I saw him look over shoulder this way, look over shoulder this way. And Mike always warned me about being too much of a geek on stage, because Star Trek had some bad experiences with fans who broke into the sets. And there's even one on YouTube of a guy who snuck onto the lot and he broke a few things, So if you act too much, so to be frank, I wasn't that worried about that. I had just come from Dick Tracy, which was Warren Beatty, who was huge in Hollywood. It was like one of the biggest shows in town at the time, with every actor you could think of. I wasn't really worried that they would, not believe in me. But so Mike, looking around, drags me down the hallway, comes to the hangar deck door. That's like the holodeck door. Pulls it open, you look in there, and that hangar, hangar bay 3, I guess, is pretty complete except the ceiling. And sitting there with that back hatch down is the shuttlecraft that they had adapted from Star Trek V, I guess. It was complete inside and out. It was really gorgeous, and it was all lit up. Everything was blinking in there. And Mike drags me in there. He gets in the pilot seat. I get in the co-pilot seat, and you can look out the windshield of the shuttle, and it's the hangar bay. I mean, it's like crazy. I'm really inside, I'm on the ship. And so we're talking, and Mike is explaining to me how, we should keep this on the lowdown, and the chances of getting in, well, we're pretty fully staffed. And he said, the only thing I could see possibly happening would be maybe a PA position. And I was like, I'll take it. And he told me later, he was like totally flabbergasted, because I was nominated for an Academy Award. And I was willing to become a PA to get into the art department. We had this bonding moment there where, because we were hiding in the shuttle, I turned to Mike and I said, Mike, you realize that we're recreating a scene from 2001 where the two astronauts hide in the pod so that Hal can't hear them? And he looked at me, and we both went and burst out into laughter. And I think that was a genuine moment where the two of us kind of bonded as Star Trek and science fiction fans. Sorry for blathering so much.
No, it's a great story.
I'm supposed to blather.
No, that's a fantastic story. I did want to ask you one thing. You've had a hand in creating an Enterprise, this being the ship we see briefly, but the Enterprise J in Star Trek
Yeah.
Enterprise. Yeah. Give us a little bit of a design for that, because I feel like not many people are aware of it, but it's not the most well-known Enterprise per se.
No, it isn't, but it really has developed a fan club.
Mm.
Um, it, I, I loved doing the J. But it was because it's a challenge. We've been doing the future for the last 15 years or whatever. Where do you go from here? You know? So I kind of looked at it as the same problem that Andy Probert had when Gene Roddenberry wanted to go from the Constitution class to the D. He still wanted a recognizable ship, but he wanted it dramatically different at the same time. It still had to be an Enterprise, but had to be dramatically different. Almost every ship we've seen since the D hasn't had that standout quality, that it tends to just look like another chicken in the window kind of thing, you know. I love the E, but it's not a quantum leap beyond the D. I like the F that was done, but it's not a quantum leap beyond the E. And so I knew that doing this ship, part of what I had to accomplish was to come up with a design that when a lot of people saw it, they would say, "That's stupid." You know what I'm saying? Because if it fits right in, you failed. It can't just fit right in. It has to be recognizable as an Enterprise, but it can't just fit right in. And that's the problem with like the E and the F. They just fit right in. If you're going to go into the future, it has to be like the first time you saw the Enterprise D. And the other thing that I learned was, and we used to have a store in Manhattan called the Federation Trading Post. It was a Star Trek store in 1976. And there was it was crazy. No one did that. And people would come in and fans loved it. And we did really well. And sometimes people would come in with their friend who was not into it, you know. And we had a wall that had all pictures of the Enterprise, the original Enterprise. And without fail, they would look at it and go, "What a stupid design." I mean, don't they care about physics? Or, I mean, it breaks. Look at those nacelle struts. They could never support those engines. And, you know, and I mean, you can look at it two ways. You could either be a critic and try to make fun of it and mock it, which makes you feel superior, or you use your imagination and you look at it and you say, well, this kind of goes against the laws of physics. Apparently, they have technology that's way beyond what I'm capable of. So it's like you have to unscrew the top of your head and take the ape's brain out and put it in a jar somewhere, so that you're not undercutting yourself because you're not able to see a way forward. I think Star Trek fans like figuring out how to make things work, you know? So I knew that I did things that I thought were outrageous on the J. I think I made it like 3 miles long, which a lot of fans like, "That's ridiculous." I think the Starship could be 30 miles long. I don't have a problem with that at all. And then the other thing is I made those nacelle struts really spindly. They're not really spindly. If it's 3 miles long, you can imagine how thick they really are, you know. But I wanted people, and I had one guy on the internet say, "Those nacelle struts are ridiculous, and why, you can knock that nacelle off like a soap bubble." And I was like, yes, that's exactly the reaction I wanted, you know. So the thing I find about Star Trek fans is that the more they find out that you planned it, thought about it, worked it out, the more they love the design. If they find out you didn't have a plan and you're just doing a science fiction design, they disrespect that. I mean, I usually find that Star Trek fans in the very beginning dislike whatever new ship is taking over. They hated the D. TNG came out. They didn't like it at all. They didn't like Picard at all. It comes down to once you start having great adventures, you know. The NX, when it first came out, there was a lot of hate in the beginning. I think what really turned almost even the haters around was when I did the refit design. And they said, "Oh my God, you had a plan. You've planned for it to evolve." And there always was a plan from the very beginning. When I was designing it, I used to take a secondary hull from a Constitution class I had and put it underneath just to see how it worked. Because eventually, if we did that, I wanted it to make sense. And so fans loved the refit is beloved. People love the refit because the refit shows respect for the design, and it also it shows that you thought about it, And they love discovering new things and love finding out that you worked it out. That's the number one thing. I've seen so many ships on some of the newer shows. I'm sorry, but they're sci-fi designs. They're not aircraft logic designs. And it's like jazz. If you don't understand it, don't mess with it. But what can I say? If you get a production designer who doesn't understand, and then brings in someone else who doesn't get it either. Gene Roddenberry, very important to me, and he's one of the things I miss most about Star Trek. And everyone needs one of his golf clubs.
Yes. Which I think is a good way to round out our interview here. Like, the Kickstarter's still ongoing. If people are watching us now, they can go out and maybe pick up a golf club if they fancy it. If not, plenty of other rewards there, like some fantastic art prints, And I'm really hoping the Kickstarter works out and you get to make the...
I believe it will, but we right now are at a real crossroads on this thing. We are so close. And if we don't make it, even if we're really, really, really close, that we lose everything. It's all or nothing on Kickstarter. So I need your help. Pretty please. Help!
Doug, thank you for sharing your insight with us today. Thank you for telling us about the Kickstarter and your many adventures, for Battlestar, through Star Trek, the Enterprise J. It's fantastic hearing from you. We'll send people over to that Kickstarter, and hopefully we'll be able to talk when the documentary is being made, and maybe, when we're seeing it.
It's my favorite subject. Anytime you want to have me on, I'm here.
Perfect. Well, we got Star Trek 60th next year, which is, a big thing. So.
Well, and Vegas probably going to show the documentary at the convention, and the book will be out by then too. So
fantastic! Wow, we got a lot to look forward to next year.
Yeah, what a year.